for coming out. Thank you for watching online. We are here in the gallery with Jim White. This is the North Floor Gallery. This exhibit just went up earlier this week. It will be on display until November 22nd, so I highly recommend you make time to come and see it in person. Also on November 22nd, Jim will be playing a show in Tangled String Studios right here at Lowe Mill, so we're very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm more known as a musician than I am as an artist. I'm known as a musician. Hardly anybody knows I do this kind of stuff in my spare time. So it's a full, proper show, 2-hour show with stories and spoken word and songs and all that.
So yeah, I suppose we could start there because someone asked me earlier how I believe it was Jill asked me how did I come to make this happen, and I had seen you play at Standard Deluxe down in Waverly, Alabama, and you had some of your folk art for sale as part of your merch.
Yeah.
And I had bought a piece because I had a couple of pieces already from crowdfunding for Misfits Jubilee and the Waffles Triangle and Jesus.
Just to side note, my album is called Waffles, Triangles, and Jesus, and normally when I make an album title, I Google it to make sure someone else hasn't used it already, and I thought, don't bother with Googling that one. And then after the album came out a month later, someone sent me a photograph of Triangle, Waffles, Jesus Loves You in North Carolina, and it kind of like, I underestimated the South. It covers a much wider spectrum of weird stuff than you might imagine.
But yes, so you are primarily known as a musician. How did you get started making visual art?
Oh, I was a visual artist before I was a musician, and I used to do line drawings, intricate line drawings, even in my teens. I was real reclusive and just probably somewhere on the spectrum, and I felt very calm drawing. But I kind of hit a glass ceiling where I couldn't get any better at it. And about the same time, I broke my leg twice in 1 year, so I was housebound for about a year, and someone left the guitar there. So to pass the time, I taught myself how to play guitar, and I couldn't learn the songs from the books that people tried to give me, so I just started making up my own chords, my own songs, and that was 50 years ago, half a century ago.
And in that 50 years, there was also film school. What got you into film?
Oh, well, I got to this point. I was about 27 years old. I'd been a professional surfer. I'd been a fashion model. I'd been a lifeguard, an asphalt crew worker. I built surfboards for a living. I did all these different things. And I realized that I was just going to kind of keep bouncing from job to job unless I decided to choose something. So I just sat down and thought, what do I like? And I thought I like music, and I like literature, and I like photography, and I like film. Well, film kind of puts all of those together. And by chance, I was living in New York City at the time, and I lived about 4 blocks from NYU Film School. And I just walked over there and thought, I'll go to school here. Didn't know that it was the preeminent film school in America. And when I told them I'd like to go to school here, they kind of snickered and said, yeah, everybody does, and you have to do this and that. And I wrote a book about some of my experiences during that time, this book right here, and it documents the totally bizarre circumstances that greased my path as a non-traditional student with not great grades to get into America's top film school. I got in through a very strange back door because the front door was crowded with, trust fund babies and celebrities' kids. And there was probably 80% of the school was, millionaires' children, and just a few of us like me and Vince Gilligan who made Breaking Bad. We were the poor kids.
And I've read the book, and it is great. Very fantastical. But a lot of it is actually what happened, correct? It's not a book of tall tales, even though it seems to be a book of tall tales.
I call it a magical realism memoir, because it just doesn't seem possible, the things that happen to me. And I didn't even connect the dots on them until my first record came out, and NPR contacted me and asked me to do a series of spoken word pieces for All Things Considered or All Songs Considered or something like that. And so Bob Boylan, who does a Tiny Desk, it was his idea, and he contacted me. And so I tried to think of something to be interesting for NPR. I started looking at incidents in my life, and all of a sudden I realized there was like a series of one after another of sort of extra phenomenal synchronistic experiences that I had gone through without realizing that I was kind of leapfrogging from one to the next. And strangely enough, it involved celebrities. There's a lot of luminary artists who seem to be pathfinders for me. I just had to get to them, and then I would find the next one. It's real puzzling, the physics to it. I don't really understand the physics. But at the end, I had experiences with some of the great minds of the 20th century on my way to rising out of serious mental health issues and poverty and all the things that you fight against when you don't really have a support system to help you become who you need to be.
And so this just came out a couple of years ago, right?
I think it came out 2022. I wrote it during COVID, so maybe 2023. When I had won a thing called Pushcart Prize, which is Pushcart Prize for short fiction. This National Endowment for the Arts is this big organization. They contacted me and asked me if I would do commentary for them for the Big Read, which is the largest literacy program ever attempted by a government. They were focusing on American classic novels like To Kill a Mockingbird and I don't know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and all these ones. Abuelita, something Abuelita, which was a really beautiful story. And the guy that was in charge of that project left to start his own magazine, and he asked me to write a short story for the magazine because he liked my contributions to the commentary about To Kill a Mockingbird. So I wrote a story and I handed it to him, and we fought a lot. He was an editor, and we fought a lot about what was in it. And finally, I just said, just do whatever you want to do with it. And he trimmed it down, and then 8 months later, he contacted me and said, "Hey, you're nominated for a Pushcart Prize," and that's like a very high prize in the fiction world. And I thought, well, that's nice. That's like one of my first stories. And then a month later, I was driving on the interstate, and the phone rang, and hello, and you won. So then I went up to New York and accepted the award with a bunch of famous authors and Pulitzer Prize winners and stuff. And we were in the rare book room of the Strand bookstore, which I'd only driven by in my taxi. I'd never been in such an exalted place of learning and knowledge. And all of these famous authors were saying, "When's your novel coming out? We loved your short story." And I live hand to mouth as a musician. I make less than most people in America. I'm far below the poverty level, and I don't mind. I know how to live that way. So there was never really a chance, but then COVID came. And when COVID came, everyone else was, going crazy, stir crazy. And you said to me the other day, you were stir crazy when you were home. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. And I sat down and wrote my novel finally.
Did you have an editor for this one?
No, that was too much trouble.
And I've often heard that the editor is very helpful, but this one read so well to me. It's a page turner.
Well, thank you.
T.T.'s afraid. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The characters, the atmosphere. I think of Spike Lee, another NYU film student.
Right.
New York City is always a character, or often a character in his movies, and New York City is definitely a character in this book as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, New York was where all of the. I grew up in sort of Assemblies of God, Pentecostal church, and I was trying to undo all the indoctrination. And I thought, where can I go? And Sodom and Gomorrah of America seemed like the right place. So I went there and started driving a taxi, and learned the things I needed to learn to let what was hidden inside of me out. And I try to write about it in the book and talk about the experiences. New York's an interesting place in that once you've learned what you need to learn there, it's a really good idea to leave, because a lot of people stay and then they start to sort of develop this inertia, and they get stuck in a time period that passes, and they become sort of brittle and fragile, and if you touch them, they crumble to dust. So I left after about 13 years, as most of it driving a taxi and all the experiences you can imagine being Travis Bickle in New York City.
So did you graduate from NYU in film?
Yeah, and then I had a nervous breakdown. I graduated. I made it was a film school, and the idea was to get a calling card to go on to Hollywood, right? So you can make films and get your films financed. And my two best friends had graduated a year before me. They had both been courted by the studios, and the studios led them on this kind of like round and round thing. And then finally they said, well, when you get your first feature, call us, we'd love to see it. And they never got any kind of a deal. So I thought, well, I'm going to squeeze a feature out of NYU somehow or other. You're only supposed to make like a 10-minute thesis film. So as fate would have it, in the basement where you get out your cameras and your Nagras and all that, one of the poor kids, one of the work-study kids, was Vince Gilligan. He worked in the cage, and we were sort of like casual acquaintances. And we were both these people that everyone was kind of counting out. But I would go and get a camera when I wasn't supposed to. And I would, the press said it was okay for me to take it for the next week. And so I kept shooting and shooting, and I ended up with a feature film. But it wasn't quite a feature. It was 57 minutes. It worked as a 57-minute film, but not as a 72. There's like a real strict. And when I tried to enter in festivals, they said, well, it's not a feature. It's not a short. Like Berlin Film Festival loved it, but they wouldn't program it because they couldn't program it as a feature or short. So I was kind of, after that was done, I was kind of stuck. And I had worked myself about 100 hours a week for about 2 years with no break to get the film done. I was paying for it by driving a taxi, which may be, in terms of the spectrum of the smart ways to finance a film, the dumbest one is driving a taxi. 72 hours.
David Lynch was Paperboy when he was doing Eraserhead.
Yeah, was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, well, Phil Glass used to drive my fleet. Yeah, Phil, they called him Phil. So same thing. And when Einstein on the Beach came out with Philip Glass, he was still driving the cab, and he would sit outside Lincoln Center and wait for people to come out and then eavesdrop on what they were saying about his masterpiece, And one lady got in, one rich aristocratic lady going to Park Avenue in the 80s, said, "Oh, driver, this is the most amusing coincidence. You have the same name as an amazing young composer, Philip Glass. I've just been to his opera." And apparently Phil, being the true minimalist that he is, said, "Oh."
So from New York back down to Pensacola?
Yeah, I went back to Pensacola. My record came out, and my daughter was sort of on the way as a sort of a surprise. My daughter, who's now 27, is a country singer of some note. But I didn't want her to have to grow up in New York City dodging piles of dog shit and needles and cigarette butts. So I left New York and went back to Pensacola. And that was just when my first record had come out.
So would you like to read anything from the book at that time, or?
Not well. There's a Pensacola part of it which is good.
Or maybe just in general, anything from the book wise.
Well, there's a Pensacola part which I was going to start with anyway, so I'll start with it. I said I had a nervous breakdown. And not only did I psychologically have a nervous breakdown, but I had a physical nervous breakdown. It turns out that I had an undiagnosed disease called celiac disease. And then I got something called peritonitis, which you can die from. It's an intestinal blockage. And I was dying. I had no health insurance. I was clinically depressed. And I ended up penniless back in Pensacola after my film had won the NYU Film Festival. In fact, it was winning the NYU Film Festival while I was laying in bed in Pensacola thinking that I was going to die. Because that's what happens when you get clinically depressed. You don't think, hey, there's good stuff happening, I'll get up and do something. You just lay there and say, something bad's coming. So I can read this section here. I was in a house, an abandoned house outside of Pensacola, in Ensley, which is, we call it Ensley of the Earthsley because it's a bad place, drug dealers, poverty, intense poverty, roaming packs of pit bulls. I was in this house, there was no electricity, no phone, no nothing, just a place where I could sleep. And there was nothing to do. I was used to the action in New York City, and suddenly I was trapped in a small satellite town outside of Pensacola, which is already slow enough. And eventually I found a pile of newspapers, Pensacola News Journal, and I would read them back to front, to pass the time. And after about 2 or 3 days of reading it, I found a section in the back of the newspaper that I just reflexively ignored. It was the felony report. And I didn't really think that that would be something worth looking at. The name, the first name of the felony report caught my attention. His name was Bonkish O'May Golden. And I like name origins, and I tried to figure out what he was. And I thought he might be a black Irish Jewish man. And so I wanted to find out why he got arrested. He was arrested for playing his guitar naked on the side of Highway 98. And I remember feeling this sudden gush of kinship. And I thought, yes, if my name was that, I too would be playing naked on the side of Highway 98. And so I thought it was really beautiful, and I felt like this, for the first time in years, I felt like this kinship with someone. I was really in trouble. I mean, I was Travis Bickle exponentially exploded. I was in real psychological trouble. And then suddenly I felt this character kind of calling out to me. So then I thought, well, I wonder if there's any other friends here. So further down I found IP rainwater. I.P. rainwater. And then there was more, General Lalavan Drain. And with each name, I felt like I'd found my tribe finally. It was really a revelation. And so I got out a little piece of paper and a pencil, and I started writing the names down. And then I went back and looked, and every single paper had at least one or two good names. I'll read a couple. They may be in this part, this book part, but Cotton Crabtree. Cotton Crabtree. Ultra Dinah Lucas. What a name. Joey Harold Pickle. Who would name her? Step Dortch and Wall Dortch. They were both arrested regularly. The Dortch brothers, there were 4 Dortch brothers, and they were all named after building parts. Step Dortch, Wall Dortch, Porch Dortch, and Door Dortch. This is true. Mary Magdalene Cheatham. Mary Magdalene Cheatham. What a name. Dominique Githand. Sambath Ouch. Great names, and so I developed this huge list of names, and it was so beautiful. And after I did the reading, asked me about how that ties in with Annie Proulx, and because I'll forget otherwise because of the ADD thing in my mind. Anyway, this is from the book. Chevet Shingle, are you back at it again? Oh no, Hiram Bargainier, you've been prowling around with that no good Mobutu Tony Hines again? Oh no. You two got no business hound dogging together. Probation officer gonna have your ass in a sling. Cotton Crabtree, I hope you've learned your lesson this time. I'm reading about the criminals in the newspaper. It's my 4th week here laid out in this impoverished sickbed, and I'm 100% stone cold bored. And you might ask, what does the body do when they're deathly ill, flat broke, with no transportation other than their own 2 feet, which aren't presently working? And the answer is not much. I wish I had a book or a radio or a deck of cards to play solitaire, but I don't. My sole form of entertainment comes via this old codger in the house next door. He's took pity on me and he brought me over a stack of newspapers that he had. Now, the Pensacola News Journal, it's your basic Gannett Press, softcore right-wing propaganda rag featuring an agonizingly narrow spectrum of mainstream bullshit. If you're suicidal, this will put you over the edge, and I certainly fit that category. The first week I was stranded here, I daily forced myself to read the few actual articles scattered among the countless mall ads. As the hours crawled by and the boredom ramped up to unbearable levels, I read and reread those papers front to back over and over, plodding through the same mind-numbingly conservative screeds, combing through the local news, then on to the inane op-eds. By late afternoon each day, true desperation would set in, whereupon I'd move to the classifieds, junk cars for sale, boats to trade, or precious few minimum wage jobs. I'd get to counting typos and noting contradictions in the previous stories. But then, near the end of that first week of bedridden perusings, tucked between the classifieds and the public legal notifications, a name in the narrow column leaked out to me, Vonkish Ome Golden. And I can sing a song about it. If I don't know.
Please do.
Yes, please. All right. Go ahead. First, do I need to ask you about Annie?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody know who Annie Proulx is? The Shipping News. She wrote the Shipping News. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer who wrote the Shipping News and is one of America's great writers. When my first record came out, it created quite a fuss critically, and the British press loved it. And they sent over this very distinguished journalist, Richard Grant is his name, and he wrote a book recently called Dispatches from Pluto that was a New York Times bestseller. But back then he was just a freelance journalist, and he came and interviewed me, which was beautiful. And at the end he said, well, I'm heading on after this to interview Annie Proulx, and when I told her I was coming, she said she wanted me to tell you that your album is beautiful and that she loves it. And, you know, and I was mentally ill cab driver who just had put out this record through a series of variables, and suddenly there's a Pulitzer Prize winner praising me. He said, is there anything that you want me to say back to her? And I went and I got my list of felony report names, and I said, give her these. And she wrote to him about a year later and said, please tell Jim White thank you. I've used many of his names in my most recent novel. And I think this is America in a nutshell. One day you can be playing your guitar naked on the side of Highway 98, and the next day you're a character in an Annie Proulx novel. That's pretty cool. All right, so I got to lean in on this one. It's called the Felony Report song. I am back behind the liquor store, chatting with some ne'er-do-wells, swapping tall tales, just killing time. It's a lazy old morning, and without warning, the trash talking starts as fisticuffs break out. First Blueberry John, slugs Ram Jam Jones, then Vonkish O'May, he jumps on Titus Stone. Red White runs, as does Guppy True. Jimmy Ray speaks, howls a kizzy coo. I guess irrational names sometimes be the name bearers to commit irrational crimes. Oh, what were you thinking, Miss Myrtleine Wink, stealing them glass eyes from the drugstore display? What were you thinking? And Catman Wendigith, you've been charged with petty theft, plus criminal mischief for ransacking your best friend's place. I went to school with Catman. Royal Hand, what a grand old name you have, but you've been an inmate far too many times. And Romeo Maytag, you never arrested for molesting a child. Yes, irrational names sometimes lead the name bearers to commit irrational crime. So much depends on the red wheelbarrow of place, time, tide, and simple chance. This house of cards that forms our fate, it comes tumbling down in tiny increments. And as the police arrive and I slip away, well, I'm downright thankful that my folks displayed some sense. Thank you, Mom and Dad. They made me simple, not after a extreme. No lifelong millstone hung around my neck. When the tongues of man became undone, mankind rebelled, just like you might expect. But take the burden of name, add some cockeyed aim, and upon that framework let experience collect. You get irrational names that sometimes lead the name bearers to commit irrational crime.
Wonderful.
There you go.
I know we've got folks here, and I'm sure we'll get to some questions, and we'll get to talking about this art. Keep me on track with time, because I get so interested. It's fascinating to me that sometimes I lose track. We're at 30 minutes? Okay, well, let's go ahead and start talking about some of the work that you brought here for us today.
Sure.
So what started with the assemblages and this style of art in comparison with writing and making music and making films? What was you said you started drawing when you were very young.
When I was young, I drew, and I got frustrated but I didn't realize how kinesthetic I was. So the drawing got me real pent up, and I gave it up because it just wasn't fulfilling. But when I lived in New York, and I was surrounded by New York urban guerrilla artists creating art out of anything, I got really excited because I always liked garbage. I always felt like an archaeologist of the present day, you know, just digging through garbage cans. I mean, there's an episode in the book that I wrote where I'm about to get mugged, and to get out of it, I start acting like a homeless man, and I'm digging in a garbage can, and I find some incredibly valuable thing that I wouldn't have even found if the muggers hadn't been chasing me. So there's kind of like a magic quality to garbage that it gets overlooked by our consumerist culture. At one point, a famous gallery in Ireland asked me if I would do a show there. And so I sent the curator what I do, and he loved it, right? And so when I boxed it all up to ship it over there, they said a detailed description of the contents, and it was easy. I just wrote garbage. And I'm sure that the custom guys really wanted to look inside, and probably took every single thing apart because they were looking for the drugs or whatever, but it was just overlooked stuff that was on the verge of going into a landfill, but instead it ended up in one of the swankiest art galleries in Europe, getting reviewed by the Irish Art Times in a 5-star review, calling it a compendium of a cabinet of wonders, which was a form of traveling entertainment in the turn of the 20th century. And so the idea of redemption is very important in there. All these things, love letters, tokens and mementos, all of these things are made from things that were about to disappear from the earth, but they got redeemed and turned into something which will have a whole other life. And if that can happen with art, it can happen with people too. It's just finding the right way to put them all together.
Yeah, it's your exhibit title. Anything can be redeemed. So do you have, what is your actual process like? Do you have, I'm sure you see something and you're attracted to it and you get it and you take it back to your house or your studio, and then you just have many things and they organically, one thing goes with another, or?
It is actually, I let random chance happen because I'm not organized. Like, I've been to artists' places where everything is stacked and cataloged and everything. My house, there's just stuff laying everywhere. And I'll go into a room and my eye will hit one thing and my eye will hit another thing, and I'll realize that they've been talking to each other when I was out of the room. And so I put them together, and then they ask for some company, and I look over there and there's something there, and pretty soon, you know, and sometimes I give them the wrong company and they get mad and it doesn't work. This watermelon guy behind you here, he's been through many different iterations before he became what he was. Whenever I'm out at the flea market or yard sales, or if I'm dumping my garbage at the recycling place, I'm always looking for things that kind of resonate with my aesthetic.
So just so I don't miss out on any questions, does anybody have any questions at this point?
I do. It's a little off topic, but I've been wondering. My family is all from the South, deep South, and my sister, 20 years ago, took off for New York. She's been there ever since.
Right.
And you said that 13 years was enough for you to learn what you needed to learn by being in New York City. I wonder what you learned.
I learned how to not roll over when culture told me to behave. I learned how to dig my feet in and say, that's not me, no thanks. And New York's good with that, because every street you walk down, there's someone trying to pull you into some scam, some kind of con, something. And then the next street, there's someone who's in true need, and you have to use your own discernment and not rely on other people to tell you what to do. It's kind of a fierce individualism that I needed to experience, not to see in a movie, not to read about in a book, but to go in there, boots on the ground, and have a gun put to my head and see how I react, and have a homeless man tell me the story of his life and not walk away instead of, because he smells bad, just sit and listen to him tell his story. One of my favorite ones, he was homeless, and he would sit on the street and shout, "Help, help, help, help." And people walked by him, no one ever talked to him. He had a little cup for coins. I'd always give him what I could. And at a certain point, it occurred to me, why is he shouting help? So I said, "Why are you shouting help?" And he said, "That's my name." So I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "My mama was in labor for 32 hours. The last 12 hours, all she shouted was help. And as revenge, that's what she named me." And like that's as beautiful thing as you would hear. Now, 6 months later, I'm a taxi driver, so I'm way up in Harlem. Homeless people stay very close to where their base is. He was down in the East Village. I'm way up in Harlem, and I see him walking around looking lost, so I pull the cab over and I say, "Help, what are you doing up here?" He said, "I'm looking for my sister and my brother. They're supposed to live up here, but I just found out they moved to North Carolina. Now I got no way to get home." I said, "Well, hop in, I'll give you a ride." So I drove him on the FDR highway, which is a real pretty highway in New York City on the east side. And we were talking, and I was really impressed how bright he was. He's just a really smart guy for a homeless, indigent person. And so I said, "Help, why didn't you ever go to college or something like that? You're really smart." He said, "Oh man, I would love to go to college, but I can't afford the intuition." And I was at NYU then, and I was taking philosophy courses. And at the end of one of my papers on Kierkegaard or something, I said, "I would write more, but I can't afford the intuition." And then said, "This is my friend Help talking." And my teacher wrote back, circled it, and said, "He's 100% right. The intuition is far more expensive than the tuition." Same thing about going to New York. You can read about New York all you want, but until you get up there and you're walking down the street at 2 o'clock in the morning and your life's in danger, it's a whole other story. And there's a lot of that in the book.
Yeah, and speaking of the story, you seem just this little bit that I know you as a storyteller and a listener of stories. Is that kind of always going into your mind, and then whatever creative outlet, be it a visual art, be it a song, be it writing, is that just a natural, innate thing of you, is the attraction to storytelling?
Well, I'm a sort of a referential thinker. I don't think thematically. I bounce from thing to thing to thing to thing. So if you're going to bounce from something substantial to something substantial. If someone asked me what my favorite color is, I couldn't tell you. If someone asked me what my favorite car was, or something I like, someone asked me what my favorite piece was in here, and I just like jam frequencies. So stories help me kind of ground my mind. I feel like as I work my way through them, whether they're little vignettes like the help story, or they're big rambling ones like the chapters in this book, they help me make sense of my place in the universe. Without them, I feel lost. And that's one of the things. I didn't have any stories when I got to New York that had meaning. I was in the Pentecostal church, and I didn't connect with anything there, but I was duty bound to it, and I was a surfer, so I was connected to a bunch of fairly shallow thinking people who just liked hedonistic experience of surfing. That didn't nourish my soul either. When I got to New York and I started collecting the stories of New York, I started feeling something inside of me that had been deprived for my whole life come to life.
It's a very, very poignant answer. And since I know, like I said, how are we looking on?
We're at 40.
Okay. Well,
if you had to give the log people right next to you a name from your book of names.
Oh, I hadn't thought of
Like
that.
the log people's name.
Oh. Well, one of them would definitely be Buster Quarles.
Okay.
Yeah, Buster Quarles. And Ivy Rainwater might be another one. But I just named them Bubba and AJ.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean,
But that's a really nice idea.
I'm like,
I hadn't thought about that.
okay.
I should look through and give them
Yeah,
a bridge name. Thank you for that. You're probably an artist.
Second name or third name will do it long.
Oh, some of the names. That Richard Grant guy, he wrote an article about it it's going to be in New Yorker magazine about my collection of names. And it was pretty exciting because my mom always read New Yorker magazine, and she was from New York, and she was an exile down in the South and didn't like it and didn't like the heat. She was so excited that when they first wrote a review about my record, but then an article about me, she was beyond belief excited. But about a day before they went to press, the Elliot Spitzer controversy broke. He was a politician who was having inappropriate affairs with young women, and they ditched my story for scandal, and it never saw the light of day again. But Richard contacts me regularly asking me if I have any good names. And if you want to read a good book, read Dispatches from Pluto. Like I said, it's a New York Times bestseller. God's Middle Finger. He's written some amazing books. He does what's called extreme travel writing, and so he will go like to he circumnavigated the Sierra Nevada by himself, which is apparently the most lawless place in the world. The Congo, he's gone to the Congo. He's an amazing writer.
Well, speaking of writing, real quickly, you have a newer book that came out recently. What is the newer one?
In 2002, I was in a BBC movie called Searching for the Wrong-Eyed Jesus. It was prompted by some English filmmakers reading a short story in my first record. You talk about making sense of things. When David Byrne heard my first record, because I was on David Byrne's label, I gave him all the final mixes. And in his own enigmatic way, he said, "Oh, yes, this is very good, but it lacks a handshake," and then he turned around and walked away. And like the Buddha had spoken, I lacked a handshake, so what would I do? So I thought, in film school, who appreciated my work? And it was the people who knew my story. So in the minor notes, instead of putting credits for who played trombone and whatever, we put a short story. English people, celebrated filmmakers in England, read the story and wanted to make a film out of it. They came, and the book is about the genesis of making the documentary that they ended up making, because I taught them how to making a narrative feature film. because I took them around the South and showed them the weird South, and after the end of a week of that, they're like, we ain't making no narrative film. This is far stranger than anything that we could imagine.
Harry Crews shows up, Johnny Dowd. Is that
Harry Crews, Johnny Dowd, Handsome Family, David Eugene Edwards, quite a. They brought those people in. Johnny Cash was supposed to be in it, but he got sick. Harry Crews was near death when he appeared in it. And they make vignettes and talk about life in the South.
It's wonderful. I really look forward to reading the book.
The book is called Skirmishes with the Lord. Adventures and accidents or something like that in the making of Searching for the Wrong Eye Jesus.
All right. Well, is there any more questions?
Are there copies of your book for sale here?
That's a good question. Yes.
Okay.
And if you could play one more song for us, we will go ahead and cut this, and then we can hang out and do some informal.
I'd like to hear about that piece, the corporate piece.
I don't know if that man's going to kill the song thing.
Oh, well, before we left, Marcia was interested in the bulletin board.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the bulletin board, please?
This one on this side here?
Yes.
Well, I have piles and piles of things, and some of them are very pleasant, some of them are very onerous. This one here is all a bunch of onerous stuff. So it's a collection of onerous communication of various forms. That's an actual drawing from a courtroom case in Pensacola, a notorious courtroom case. I can't remember what it was, but I remember when I found it in the garbage pile, I was very excited because I recognized the attorney. There's a white supremacist tag. There's a heartbreaking letter to a veteran who the Veterans Association or administration is not giving him the medical care, and they make him fill out all these forms and he can hardly write. So it's really heartbreaking. Do not lie to John Thomas, like that speaks for itself. These are all found objects. The man in the sepia tone picture is Smolinski. I write about him in the book. When he was buried in a pauper's grave, he owned 2 Stradivarius violins, which the city of New York confiscated because he had no heir. Nice for them, but would have been nice to put him in a decent grave. So it's a little bit of darkness. This is another bulletin board. I found a notebook that a kid had drawn in, and it was so poignant. The story was told just by these 2 pictures here. He moved all the time, and that was his idea of home. This very long, straight, distant road. And that one doesn't have quite any real poignant meaning. It just felt good associatively with the other 2. I often think in terms of 3s.
It's the listener. It's the listener.
It's the listener. Very good. All right. I'm hiring you to do my press next time. Do you like the song?
Yeah, we'll do another song.
Okay. This is one I wrote when I was still. This is the first song I wrote when I was clinically depressed. I hadn't played guitar in 10 years. I was in Pensacola and I had nothing to do. And my stepdad brought me his guitar. I never knew he was an airplane mechanic. Never knew he had any interest in the arts. He had this surf guitar that he bought when he was 14 with paperboard money and a little amp. And he said, "Hey, if you're bored, here, pass the time playing guitar." And the first song I wrote, which started my rise back to becoming a human being again after being so beaten down and so defeated, was this song right here. Way down south I know a girl who is blind. She walks along the lonely highway each day. She dreams that one day a man will pull up in a car. He'll open up the door, she'll climb in. He will say, "Hey babe, what what you know. Hope you're ready to go, 'cause today is a perfect day. Yeah, yeah, to chase a tornado. To chase a tornado. Yeah, when the wild wind whips around your head, you know, yes you know, that you have found a perfect day. Yeah, 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 to chase tornadoes. And what about that preacher man on the run from the law? He killed a girl in Memphis and ran to the dogs, tracked him down. They shot him by the river as he lay dying in the mud. Well, someone asked him, hey preacher, where's your soul going now? The preacher said, well, I do not know, but wherever it is, I gladly go, 'cause today is a perfect day. Yeah, yeah, to chase a tornado. To chase a tornado. Yeah, when the wild wind whips around your head, you know, yes you know, that you have found a perfect day. Yeah, 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 to chase a tornado. Sometimes I think the sky's a prison and the earth is a grave. Sometimes I feel like Jesus in some Chinese opera. Sometimes I'm glad I built my mansion from crazy little stones. But sometimes I feel so goddamn trapped by everything that I know. And I wish it wasn't so, 'cause the only thing that anyone should ever know is that today is a perfect day. Yeah, yeah, to chase a tornado. To chase a tornado. Yes, when a wild wind whips around your head, you know, yes you know, that you have found a perfect day. Yeah, 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 to chase a tornado.
Thank you so much, Jim. Yes, feel free. There are books and records here. This exhibit is up until November 22nd. Everything is for sale, so if you would like to buy anything, you can contact me. If you would like to buy books or records, you can talk to Jim. And thank you so much, Jim. And Jim will be back on November 22nd for the closing reception for Open Studio Night from 5 to 7 p.m.
Yeah, and I'll play a full, proper show with my full presentation. It won't be just talking all the time. All right, thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you.